Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com and the Big Four Accounting Firms YouTube channel. Before we start today's podcast, I wanted to ask for your support. If you enjoy this podcast and want to support us, even with $1, we'd ask that you use the link in the description to support us. It's for a website called Buy Me a Coffee, and you essentially it's just a way to donate to us or support us. And you can also support us by buying our books and courses that we offer, and we'll include all of that in the show notes to this podcast and to the description on YouTube. So if you could support us with $1 or any donation, you'll see it on the website, the ways to donate, and it would be greatly appreciated. If you do not want to support, then enjoy the content, and we hope that you'll think about supporting in the future. Today's podcast, I wanted to provide an update on the Big Four layoffs and where we stand, because things are progressing, things are getting worse, and just wanted to provide an update because a lot of things have changed. First, I wanted to address the firm with the most activity. The firm with the most activity as far as layoffs go is KPMG. And I'm not going to be discussing only layoffs, but layoffs are the most significant, so we will be highlighting those the most today. So KPMG, they've had a couple hundred layoffs in most of their significant offices around the globe. And KPMG UK laid off approximately 200 employees. KPMG Australia laid off 200 employees. KPMG Canada laid off about 200 employees. And if you remember, KPMG Canada was the first Big Four accounting firm that started laying people off. And there's also reports that KPMG US is laying people off. And there's also reduction in partner draws. And there's other measures that are happening in the United States. But before Lynn Doty left, she said there wouldn't be layoffs, but we'll see how that goes. And I think there are going to be layoffs in most places. It's just going to be, they might not be public. They might be sort of shadow layoffs, saying that they're performance related. And as far as significant things that KPMG Global is doing, well, KPMG Global is cutting pensions and 401k contributions are being reduced. And this is a pretty significant step that I discussed when we discussed KPMG UK layoffs. And I think it's not that significant if they don't do it for the young employees, but because I don't think they should do it for young employees, because young employees don't make enough money to where they should hinder their retirement. But if they're doing it for the older employees, I understand, because if you have somebody that's making like $300,000 or $200,000, 6% or 4% of that is a significant amount of money. I mean, not significant to the firm, but to the person and to the firm. I guess to the firm, but 4% of that is a significant amount of money over the number of employees for the firm. But even that added up in these pension retirement plans, I don't think is that significant. I think it really helps people in their personal lives and encourages them to save for the future. And I really don't like this step. And next up, we'll move on to Ernst & Young. Now, the thing with Ernst & Young is very curious, is that they've announced basically no layoffs. But they will likely lay off people at some point. But the most likely the reason that E&Y is not laying people off is because they're most likely doing a hiring freeze. They're just completely not hiring people. This would be another way of not laying people off, because not hiring people saves you tens of thousands of employees, because every year the Big Four accounting firms hire more people. Like the net amount of people that join the Big Four is positive. That means every year there's tens of thousands of employees that leave the Big Four, but they hire tens of thousands more than that. And so what E&Y is doing, instead of laying people off, is they're freezing their hiring. And E&Y is also have pay cuts, mostly around 20%. The U.S. bonuses have been eliminated or lowered. Promotions have been deferred, and they're doing virtual internships. And most of the Big Four accounting firms are doing virtual internships. Next up, I wanted to discuss PwC. Now, PwC Australia was said to have let go of 400 employees, and other global locations are also letting go of people. And the United States is also rumored to be letting go of people, but they're letting them go through performance-related firings. So this is what I discussed earlier about these shadow layoffs, where they're not acknowledging layoffs, but they're doing it through performance-based firings, or whatever you want to call it. And the general partners at PwC are also having to take a pay cut. And lastly, I wanted to discuss Deloitte. Now, Deloitte let 5% of their workforce in the US go, and that's a lot of people. That's about 5,000 employees. And this is the most extensive public layoff by any Big Four. And this could be because Deloitte is more focused on consulting than any of the other firms. And we have been seeing across the firms that consulting is the hardest hit right now. So Deloitte is basically throwing in the towel with all their measures. Their partners don't want to take any more pay cuts, and they're starting to let the employees go. Now, Deloitte Canada has also had layoffs, but they have much less people than the Deloitte US. So they let about 200 people go in Canada. And Deloitte Australia let about 7% of their workforce go. And this is about 500 or 600 people. So this is another extensive layoff for Deloitte. Another thing that Deloitte is doing is they're doing about a 20 to 40% pay reduction around their globe for staff and partners. And there's no salary increases for Deloitte in certain regions. And if you want to keep track of that, make sure to take a look at our Big Four layoff and pay cut tracker on our website. We'll include a link in the description to this podcast. And lastly, I want to discuss what to expect in this coming year, because we're going to have the yearly reviews for these Big Four coming up pretty soon. And these yearly reviews are basically marketing materials for clients, because I was looking through one the other day and I'm like, why do they even do these yearly reviews? Because if I was a CEO of a Big Four right now, I would not want to fill out that yearly review. But again, these yearly reviews are just marketing materials. So even though it's a dire economy and there's chaos in the world, they're going to spin it to where it's only positive. And that's what I would remind people when they look through these, is that it's going to be only positive. But also, they don't have to put these out. Like I just said, they don't have to put these annual reviews out. And so I also would not trust them, because I don't think they're going to be fully reporting their employee numbers, or if they are, they're going to be doctored, because we should see the layoffs in these annual review numbers. But these annual reviews are as of a certain date, and I'm sure they're going to doctor that date to show that they haven't been laying people off. Now, I wanted to report last year's numbers for people to keep an eye on. The Deloitte number of employees for 2019 was 312,000 employees. Now, if you remember what I told you, they laid off 5,000 in the US and probably around 1,000 around the globe. So you'd expect this to come down to be around 300,000 employees, but we don't know, because we don't know how many people they've hired, and we don't know the real number of employees they let go. Now, next up, Ernst & Young number of employees is 284,000 for 2019. Keep in mind, E&Y has said that they're having a hiring freeze, but you also have to remember that there's been E&Y people that have quit. So it should, at the very most, be at 284,000 employees. And then, you have some people quitting there. So it should be around this number, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on how many people they hired before they did the hiring freeze. And also based on how many people quit. Now, PwC's number, they're being very secretive. So their number in 2019 was 276,000 employees. And we're going to really have to keep an eye on that to figure out where their hiring's at, and also where their layoffs have been. Now, KPMG, we know, has been laying people off, but the numbers they've been reporting have been very low. So we'll also want to keep an eye on that. In 2019, their number of employees was 219,000. But as you see, KPMG has way less employees than Deloitte. So this is why their layoffs are way less. But it'll be interesting to see where all their employee numbers shake up, because we don't really know what they're doing with hiring, because they don't really publish too much of that information when they're hiring people. And they're also not going to advertise that they're hiring way less people. So that's just something to keep an eye on. We'll keep an eye on this for you and update you as we get information that becomes public. Thanks for listening. Make sure to check out our website, big4accountingfirms.com, and our YouTube channel, Big 4 Accounting Firms. And we'd also remind you to help support this podcast by buying us a coffee through the link in this description. Thanks for listening.